Hello, and welcome to Adaptable, the show where I compare and analyze an adaptation and a source material. I am your host, Mr. Flitton, and I am very excited to be doing this show. This is the first episode, and I'm excited to do this show because I'm such a huge lover of movies, and video games, and books, and comics, and manga, and anime, and cartoons, and television, and mythologies, and fairy tales. But I'm also very excited to start this show because we are going to be looking at one of my favorite fairy tales and one of my favorite movies, The Little Mermaid. Son of a... The Little Mermaid. Now, I adore both of these, and I am confident that scrutinizing and analyzing and critiquing them will in no way impact how much they are dear to me. Alright, so let's get started with some background info. The Little Mermaid was written by the Danish author Hans Christian Andersen in the year 1837. It wasn't an immediate success, but it did gain traction over its life, and now is one of the most famous fairy tales of all time. It had several adaptations over its nearly 200 years of existence, but easily the most famous of them is Walt Disney's The Little Mermaid, a huge success and an instant classic, bringing Disney's animation into what is now known as the Disney Renaissance. For context, after Walt and Roy Disney died in '66 and '71, the company wasn't making many successful animated films. This wasn't helped when their lead animator, Don Bluth, went to start his own rival animation company, taking several Disney animators with him. What followed from Disney were unsuccessful but not awful films that were now unfortunately directly competing with Don Bluth. In response to this, the Walt Disney Company did some business restructuring and changed their creative leads in an attempt to get back to their roots. An idea to adapt The Little Mermaid had been floating around since the 1930s when Walt himself was directing. In the 1980s, it was decided to finally adapt the fairy tale to the big screen and give it a classical musical theme like past Disney fairy tales, but with a Broadway tone. The result? One of the best animated films of all time. It took the title of Best Earning Animated Feature from Bluth and won 2 Oscars and launched Disney Animation into a 10-year period where they would release hit after hit after hit. So, without this film, Disney might not have had the courage to make Aladdin, or Beauty and the Beast, or Mulan, or Hercules, or Hunchback of Notre Dame, or Tarzan. Or maybe even further down the line, they wouldn't have made Tangled, or Frozen, or Moana. This really just can't be understated.
I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
Really?
And so, with this month being the 30th anniversary of Disney's Little Mermaid movie coming out, I figured there's no better time to critique and analyze it. So, let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to start by summarizing the fairy tale, because I'm assuming that you're already familiar with the movie. So we're going to go into the unfamiliar first. That way when we get to the familiar, we can look at it through new eyes. Does that sound fair? Why did I think I'd get an answer? The fairy tale begins far from land at the bottom of the sea, describing the kingdom of the merfolk and all the unimaginable treasures that rest below the waves. Here we meet the royal mermaid family, the widower king, his mother, and his 6 mermaid princess daughters. And by the way, just a heads up. In the fairy tale, none of the characters have proper names. Everyone is referred to as the Little Mermaid, or the Prince, or the King, or the Sea Witch. In that fashion. So don't get confused when I don't call the Little Mermaid Ariel or whatever, okay? Because it's not how it works. Now, the youngest of the daughters is, of course, the Little Mermaid. She and her sisters spend all their time cultivating their sea gardens with sea flowers and sea trees and sea birds. But their favorite thing to do is listen to their grandmother tell stories about the surface world. You see, when a merperson turns 15, they are allowed to go to the surface. Not even just once, it's as much as they like. But each of the sisters wants to visit the surface for themselves and see everything that has been told to them. As the story begins, the oldest is just about to turn 15, and each sister is roughly 1 year younger than the last. So the Little Mermaid has to wait 5 years until she gets to the surface. One by one, each sister visits the surface and sees something new. As each sister returns from her trip, she describes all of the things she has seen to her sisters. One sees a sunset, one sees a clear sky, one goes close to the coast, and one sees a human town. The Little Mermaid grows more and more excited as her 15th birthday gets closer. Finally, her birthday arrives and she is lucky enough to see a ship when she goes to the surface. She gets closer and finds that the ship and its crew are celebrating the 16th birthday of a young prince. What a coincidence! The Little Mermaid watches the celebration, completely infatuated with the prince, noting how he looks just like the statue she has in her garden. She watches all night until a storm approaches and sinks the ship. The Little Mermaid, of course, saves the prince, and she takes him to shore, kisses his head, and stays with him to make sure he's okay. But then, right before the prince is rescued and he wakes up, the Little Mermaid hides from the approaching human rescuers, for she is afraid of being found as a mermaid. From here on, the Little Mermaid returns to the surface over and over, day after day, hoping to see her prince one more time. Each day she doesn't find him and slowly falls into a depression. One day she overhears sailors talking about how the prince is looking for a girl who rescued him, and just like that, her desire to be with him grows ever stronger. It's at this point where the Little Mermaid asks her grandmother about humans, specifically if they can live forever if they don't drown. Grandma says, "No, in fact they live way less than we do." Because you see, mermaids live 300 years. "But when they do die, they get to go into the heavenly world because they have immortal souls. When we die, we just turn into sea foam." The Little Mermaid then cries, "Why can't I have an immortal soul?" Okay, I might not have to do this Little Mermaid voice. Okay. The Little Mermaid then cries, "Why can't I have an immortal soul? I would trade all 300 years of my life to live one day as a human and then go to heaven." Because, you know, that's how teenagers act. And then Grandma says, "But everything is better under the sea." I mean, essentially, I'm paraphrasing a bit. Then the Little Mermaid asks, "Can I get an immortal soul?" And Grandma's like, "Well, you have to have a man love you more than his parents, think of you constantly, and marry you. Then, boom, you get a soul. But it's not gonna happen, sis, because while we think fishtails are beautiful, humans think they're ugly." Oh, we're still going. So, the Little Mermaid is of course devastated, but then she goes to a mermaid ball and sings to try and cheer herself up. And she does this because she has the most beautiful voice of all mermaids. Wait, scratch that. The most beautiful voice on land and sea. Everyone applauds, but she can't stop thinking about the prince. And as a last resort, she goes to the Sea Witch. So the Sea Witch lives in a maelstrom of a whirlpool, surrounded by carnivorous plant-animal hybrid polyps in a house made of bones of drowned sailors. Weird flex, but okay. Okay, important note here. The Sea Witch in the fairy tale is not a malevolent figure. I know I said I wouldn't do comparisons yet. This one's actually really important. The Sea Witch doesn't seek the Little Mermaid out. She doesn't do anything to give herself political leverage or ultimate power. She's just a businesswoman. The witch basically tells the Little Mermaid that she can turn her into a human, but not for free. Because if you're good at something, never do it for free. The Sea Witch explains that she can make the Little Mermaid a potion, an underwater potion. Okay. And so the Sea Witch is like, "Okay, I can make you a potion that will turn your fins into legs forever. However, it will hurt like you've been impaled by a sword. You'll be able to walk more gracefully than any dancer, but your feet will hurt so bad that they bleed with every step." And the mermaid's like, "Okay, sounds good so far." But then the Sea Witch is like, "Oh, and all that stuff you have to do to get an immortal soul? If the prince does that with someone else, you die when the sun rises on the next day. And not only that, but you die a mermaid death, so you turn into sea foam on the waves." And the Little Mermaid is like, I like my odds. So the Sea Witch says, "Okay, but I need payment. You have the best voice ever, despite the guy voicing this, and I want it. This potion requires my blood, and I ain't bleeding unless I get something in return, And then the Little Mermaid asks, "But if I can't talk?" Then, and the witch says, "Looks, pretty face, body language, yada yada yada, give me your tongue." And the Little Mermaid is like, "Sure, let's do it." No, seriously, she has like no qualms about that. So, bippity boppity boom, the cut is tongue out, the witch stabs herself and throws stuff in the cauldron, makes a potion, the mermaid drinks it, feels a horrible stabbing pain like she's being impaled, and then she passes out. But, when the Little Mermaid wakes up, she has legs! Yay! And the prince has already found her? Yay! And the prince is like, "Who are you? How did you get here?" And she's like, "I'm a mermaid. And I'm a mermaid." Except she doesn't say anything like that because she has no tongue. Now, everyone in the castle is captivated by the Little Mermaid. She's extremely beautiful, unbelievably graceful, and her feet bleed. Like a lot. She wishes she could sing for everyone because she knows she can do it better than the entertainment at the castle, but she's also just happy to be there. The prince says that he adores the Little Mermaid and calls her his little foundling. And he says that she will never leave his side, and she can even sleep in front of his door on a pillow.
Only thing that could make this day better is ice cream.
So every day after her travels with the prince are over, the Little Mermaid cools her feet in the sea. One night, her sisters, dad, and grandma come to visit her and ask her to come home, saying that they miss her terribly. Oh, okay, quick side note, just because this is my favorite part of the whole fairy tale. The Little Mermaid's sitting out on the dock, and she's just looking out into the sea. And the prince comes up and is like, "Oh, do you like the sea?" And then he mansplains it to her. He's like, "Yeah, the sea can be calm or stormy, and there's all kinds of pretty fish out there, and divers have told us what they've seen down there." And she's just sitting there like, "Yeah? It's incredible!" She's just sitting there like, "Yeah, I know, I'm a mermaid." And Hans Christian Andersen actually wrote in a mansplaining scene in his fairy tale for little girls in 1837. I love this man. Okay, back to the story. The Little Mermaid has a talk with the prince, where with her eyes she asks him if he finds her dearest most of all. And the prince is like, "Yes, I do like you most of all." Because the prince is a mind reader now. "And I do care for you," says the prince, "because you look identical to the girl who saved me." Okay, he's a dumbass mind reader, but still. "But I have to marry a neighboring princess. I don't love her though, so I'll just meet her and tell her that I can't marry her, and then instead I'll marry you." The Little Mermaid is naturally thrilled to hear this, until she meets the princess. See, the princess is super gorgeous, and the prince instantly mistakes her for his savior. Like an idiot. And the princess, even after hearing him declare that she saved him, and her knowing that she didn't, goes along with it. Like a jerk. And the Little Mermaid, watching all this unfold, is heartbroken. Like any sane person would be. So the prince and the princess are married at sea. The Little Mermaid accompanies them the entire time. She's described as being so distraught that she can't hear the music, but still she puts on a brave face and supports her love, even with the thought of death in her heart. She realizes that everything she has sacrificed has been in vain. No voice, no love, no immortal soul. When the sun rises in the morning, she will die and turn to foam on the waves, and with her not leaving a body, she realizes that the prince won't even know that she died. Oh, but it's okay, because her sisters appear on the sea surface with shaved heads. They tell her that they gave their hair to the witch in exchange for a magical knife. They give it to the Little Mermaid and tell her that she can be a mermaid again if she takes the dagger and plunges it into the prince's heart. This is not an appropriate alternative. So she sneaks into the newlyweds' room where the prince and the princess are sleeping. She approaches and hears the prince whisper his bride's name in his sleep, proving to the Little Mermaid that he doesn't even dream about her anymore. Even after all that, she still can't kill him. She throws a dagger overboard into the sea, kisses him on the forehead, and throws herself into the waves, right as the sun dawns and she turns into foam. And that is the original ending. And yeah, even back then, everyone said it was way too dark. So good old HCA wrote an alternative. As the Little Mermaid is about to die, she suddenly sees angelic feminine forms who call themselves Daughters of Air. They explain that they had no mortal souls, but after their virtuous lives have ended, they earned a chance from God to earn immortal souls of their own by performing good deeds. The Little Mermaid can now join them and earn a soul of her own and become a Daughter of Air. But before the Little Mermaid can accept, she sees the prince and the princess run out to the side of the boat, seemingly already knowing that the Little Mermaid has thrown herself off. And both the prince and the princess mourn her and weep. The Little Mermaid cries for the first time and forgives them, leaving with the Daughters of Air to begin her quest to earn her very own immortal soul. And that is the fairy tale. I know my amazing summary took a little while, but I mean, it's only 20 pages. The rest is all just other fairy tales. And it kind of felt weird to just skimp on something that's only 20 pages. But now we're all familiar, thanks to you sitting through my master crash course, and so we can move on to Disney film. Alright, so, right off the bat we get just an incredible opening. And I don't mean just visually. Indulge me for a second because I'm going to go deep for a few minutes. As soon as the film starts, we get beautiful hand-drawn animation of birds over painted backgrounds, dolphins leaping from waves, and a computer-animated ship. But as I was saying, the true incredibility of this opening isn't the animation or the art style. It's how smoothly and effectively the audience is introduced to the overarching tone, themes, characters, and plot. Along with the wonderful traditional animation, the first song is sung within the first 90 seconds, introducing us to the film's musical tone. And before the song is even over, we meet our first main character, Prince Eric.
Isn't this great? The salty sea air, the wind blowing in your face. Perfect day to be at sea.
He says so little, and we can already tell that he's a happy, positive dude who loves the sea, his dog, and is willing to help his crew. He really starts out on the right foot. But he's not all that's being introduced. In the song, the crew sing about mermaids, and one crew member in particular mentions how King Triton must be in a good mood to have the sea be so fair.
Strong wind and a following sea. King Triton must be in a friendly type mood.
Eric then acts as a surrogate audience and asks about King Triton, having his crew explain that he is the king of the mer people.
King Triton?
Why, ruler of the mer people, lad. Thought every good sailor knew about him.
However, Eric's assistant provides a contrast, telling Eric not to believe in the sailor's lies. This also informs the audience that some, if not many, humans do not believe in mermaids and mermen.
Mer people. Eric, pay no attention to this nautical nonsense.
But it ain't nonsense, it's the truth.
And so, as the first song winds down, we follow this fish as it escapes from the fishermen and plunges back into the sea. This not only takes us from the human world to the mermaid world without use of a cutaway, it transitions us seamlessly into the new ocean setting with the fish acting as our sort of guide. And, when we first enter the sea, it changes from this gray, dull, overcast day to this gorgeous, shimmering azure blue, along with the music changing from the soundtrack of a campy sailor tune to the orchestral score, drawing a clear contrast between the dull surface world and the beauty of the undersea world. Not only that, but also giving us an inverted example of the protagonist's view of the two worlds, subliminally suggesting to us that since we are humans and know what a cloudy day looks like, but don't know what the bottom of the sea looks like, wouldn't it be plausible for a mermaid to have the inverse thought process? So we are only 2.5 minutes in, and we've already established the art and animation style, the musical tone, the love interest, a rule of the story world, piqued our interest for the King Triton character, transition between the two settings, drawn contrast between them, and gain sympathy for the protagonist who we haven't even met yet. Only now do we get the title card. We have just been fed an incredible amount of information. Information that I'm willing to wager you didn't pick up on your first or second or 50th viewing of this movie. I mean, not that you've seen this 50 times, because I mean, I haven't. That'd be weird. But anyways, it's masterful how well this all starts. As the opening credits roll, we are graced with even more undersea splendor until... BAM! Merman, mermen, mermaids, merpeople. Everyone! And a glowing, shimmering castle. At the 4-minute mark, we are introduced to King Triton. His reputation already preceding him, we now get to see him in all his majesty. See how his subjects react to him with cheers and fanfare. We also see his trident, which is an important plot device, and we see it perform a magic trick, which informs us of its importance through action rather than dialogue. This is how you introduce a character. But it's not over, because we are immediately after introduced to Sebastian, another main character, and we get an immediate contrast between him and the king, showing his role in the kingdom. Again, this is masterful. As viewers, we thoughtlessly and effortlessly absorb information on these two new characters, the story world, and now this major plot device, the trident. And now remember that this is technically a kids' movie. All this information didn't need to be processed and absorbed by adults, but by kids too. Kids who might have never even seen another movie before. That's how genius this writing is. Even when we were kids, we could and did process everything that was being told to us, even if we didn't consciously register it. Okay, so we are almost 5 minutes in, and we have seemingly all the groundwork laid out for us. We have the supporting cast, and the story world, and the musical tone, and all the other things I said. But where's the main character? Where's the protagonist? The film is called The Little Mermaid. When we get to meet her. Is that her? I mean, she's little, and a mermaid. But is she the Little Mermaid? How about her? Or her? Wait, is that one wearing a Mickey Mouse hat? Is that one Mickey Mouse? Well, we are cleverly introduced to the Little Mermaid in small bites. First, Sebastian and Triton talk about the concert that's happening.
I'm really looking forward to this performance, Sebastian.
Oh, Your Majesty!
We learn from Sebastian that Triton's daughters are performing.
Your daughters, they will be spectacular!
Then we learn that Triton is excited for the performance from someone called Ariel, who must be his daughter.
Yes, and especially my little Ariel.
And then we hear about her from Sebastian.
Yes, yes. She has the most beautiful voice. If only she'd show up for rehearsals once in a while.
So, just like Triton, we learn about Ariel from other sources. However, whereas we only learned a little bit about Triton, we get a lot more information about Ariel. First, we know that Ariel is important because she is Triton's daughter. Daughter of the Sea King, ergo princess, important. Second, we can tell that she's actually Triton's favorite daughter, because he didn't bother to name any of the other ones. Or I mean, he named them, he just didn't mention their names. Third, from Sebastian, we learn that she is both talented but irresponsible, which rounds out her character by showing both a positive and a negative, making our protagonist likable, but also flawed. So we see the concert start, meet the sisters, and when it gets to Ariel's introduction, of course she's not there. But then, where is she?
Ariel, wait for me! Flounder, hurry up!
Boom. This is how you introduce a protagonist. We learn about her in a way that we're already familiar to. We learn about her importance, a strength, a weakness, her relationship to another character, and all this before we even see her. And when we do finally see her, we get so much more. The way she's drawn, the way she's animated, we get so much curiosity, wonder, courage, and her clear infatuation with the surface world. And that's all just the first impression! The scene that follows just strengthens what we've learned and starts us out on the right foot. Or the right fin, tail. It's a good intro is what I'm saying. Alright. So I'm not going to go this stupidly in depth with the whole movie, because this video is going to be like a bajillion hours long. I just wanted to give some special attention to the opening, because I don't think it gets anywhere near as much credit as it deserves. I will be taking some smaller detours for other important scenes, like character introductions, but other than that, I'm just going to do a good basic skinning and summarizing. So, Ariel and her fish friend Flounder search a sunken ship for human treasure, endangering herself to get eaten by a shark just to get a fork. Again, this shows her obsession with the human world. Then she goes above the water to meet Scuttle, a seagull who appraises her treasure for her. Since they already have a working relationship, we know that she's done this before. Scuttle gives some misinformation, says some funny lines, and inadvertently reminds Ariel that she skipped out on her concert, which causes her to leave. As she swims home, however, we are introduced to a dark figure that watches her from afar. And so we are introduced to Ursula, the Sea Witch. She's only on screen for 60 seconds, and this is what we learn from her. First, we learn that she knows who Ariel is and has contempt for her, and more importantly, Triton.
Yes, hurry home, princess. We wouldn't want to miss old Daddy's celebration, now would we? Ha! Celebration indeed. Oh, bah!
Second, we learn that she used to live in the palace but doesn't anymore.
In my day, we had fantastical feasts when I lived in the palace.
Third, we see her unique design, being an octopus mermaid. Fourth, we learn that she has a plan to get revenge on Triton, seemingly for her exile, though it is never made clear.
Well, I'll give him something to celebrate soon enough.
And finally, she believes that she can use Ariel for her own sinister goals.
She may be the key to Triton's undoing.
And so, once again, we are effectively introduced to a new character. This time, it's the antagonist. And while we do learn more about her through other characters, like we've done before, there's also an excellent insight into her motivation. Anyways, Ariel and Flounder go home to apologize to her father when it slips out that she's been gathering human things and has been going to the surface. It doesn't go well.
And I am never to hear of you going to the surface again. Is that clear?
Triton orders Sebastian to follow Ariel to keep her out of trouble. He follows Ariel and Flounder to the secret lair and see that she's a hoarder. I mean, wow! Wow! What kind of lunatic needs so much useless stuff? Did I say lunatic? I meant rad dude. Back to Ariel. As she laments her mermaid world, she sings the song. The song. You know the one. The one I can't freely play because of copyright. The one I could only play a few seconds of.
Wandering free. Wish I could be part of that.
Anyway, this scene sets up her motivation and it's immediately followed by...
Ariel!
Ariel goes to the surface and sees a human. Well, a bunch of humans. But she looks at one specifically. Eric! The prince from the first few minutes! It's love at first sight. Meanwhile, Eric's servant, Grimsby, gives him a statue and talks about Eric's love life.
Yes, I commissioned it myself. Of course, I had hoped it would be a wedding present.
Oh, come on, Grim. Don't start. Oh, believe me, Grim, when I find her, I'll know. Without a doubt, it'll just, bam, hit me. Like lightning.
So, of course, a storm comes and hits the ship. Eric's in danger, Ariel saves him from drowning and gets him to a beach where he can recover. As he recovers, Ariel sings to him and rouses him awake. As Eric slowly comes to, he's able to get a very limited look at Ariel, but she quickly flees as Grimsby comes to rescue him. And so, Ariel now knows that she's in love with him and has to be with him, but she doesn't know when or how. She literally sings it.
I don't know when, I don't know how, but I know something's starting right now. Watch and you'll see, someday I'll be part of you.
All the while, Ursula watches and sees her opportunity to get her revenge on Triton.
Child is in love with a human, and not just any human, a prince. Daddy'll love that.
So, Ariel returns home, hopelessly lovesick. Triton, of course, wonders who the lucky merman could be, while Sebastian sings Ariel the other famous song to convince her to stay in the ocean. You know, this one.
Ariel, listen to me.
See, that's all I need to play, and you know what one it is. Ariel, of course, doesn't listen because Flounder got her a new collectible for her collection. Like she needed any more. So that's why my mouth tastes like foot. Anyways, after Ariel disappears, Triton summons Sebastian to find out who Ariel's crushing on. He learns it's a human and forces Sebastian to take him to Ariel, who happens to be admiring her collection. They argue about Ariel loving a human, and Triton does what any kind, respectful father would do. Father of the Year. And so, Ariel's devastated, and before the embers of Triton's temper tantrum have even cooled, which should be immediately, since, you know, underwater, Ursula's eels, Flotsam and Jetsam, bring her to Ursula, with Flounder and Sebastian trying to stop her. Here, Ursula tells Ariel that she has an answer to her problem and can turn into a human to get with the prince, all while singing the most underrated song. And if you don't think this song is great, I can only apologize because you are a poor, unfortunate soul. Ursula makes the deal sound sweeter than it is by using all the classic salesman techniques. A light show, colorful visuals, setting up a ticking clock, forcing a signature under duress without allowing the reading of the terms, and even using freaking Latin.
Ruga Savruga, come wings of the Caspian Sea. Larynxus, glossitis, equinax, laryngitis, la voce to me.
It works, unfortunately. Ariel signs the contract, Ursula takes her voice, and Ariel gets legs. Ariel rushes to the surface, meets up with Scuttle, and Sebastian reminds us of the plot.
She's got legs, you idiot! She traded her voice to the sea witch and got legs. Jeez, man.
You got that? Good. I was worried you need a refresher since it's been a whole 30 seconds since Ursula explained it. And then, almost immediately, Eric runs into Ariel and the two hit it off.
Have we met? We have met. I knew it. You're the one I've been looking for. What's your name? What's wrong? What is it? You can't speak? Oh, then you couldn't be who I thought.
Come on!
But thankfully she goes to the castle with them all the same. Ariel gets cleaned up, gets dressed, blows a dude's pipe, Chef sings a song in French, Ariel watches Eric through the window, goes to bed, and then spends the next day with Eric wasting time. I mean, she has 3 whole days, so no rush, right? It's not like her dad is worrying about her or anything.
Any sign of them?
No, Your Majesty. We've searched everywhere. We've found no trace of your daughter or Sebastian.
Well, keep looking. Leave no shell unturned, no coral unexplored. Oh, what have I done? What have I done?
Ariel has fun with Eric, looking at chickens, watching a puppet show, dancing like she's never danced before, because she hasn't. And at sunset, they go to easily the most romantic spot in the kingdom, and we hear the 3rd best song in the film. Beautiful. Turn it up, turn it up. No, it's Kiss the Girl. It's harmonic and poetic and makes you unsure if Eric can understand all the sea creatures or not. I mean, he can understand this, right?
Ariel. Her name is Ariel.
Ariel?
So, can he hear the rest of the song? Does he not hear the fish singing? What is the point? What does he understand?
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Anyway, they almost kiss, but Ursula cheats and then takes matters into her own tentacles.
Well, it's time Ursula took matters into her own tentacles.
Yeah, like I said. Ariel wakes up the next day, runs down some 3D stairs, and finds out that Eric is marrying some bitch that won't treat him right. Anyway, the sun's about to set on the 3rd day when Scuttle learns that, gasp! The brunette is Ursula in disguise! Scuttle tells the gang and Ariel rushes to the ship to get back her man. Shenanigans ensue as Scuttle stalls a wedding, Ursula is tormented, the locket that holds Ariel's voice is broken, and Ariel can once again speak. Eric's no longer brainwashed as happily ever.
You're too late! You're too late!
Oh, we ain't done yet. Ursula steals Ariel back into the sea, but oh, it's okay! Daddy's here to fix it! Oh, and Eric's gonna help too!
Grim, I lost her once. I'm not gonna lose her again.
Triton gives his trident to Ursula, because he can't break the contract.
You see? The contract's legal, binding, and completely unbreakable.
Except it isn't, because it was signed under duress, without a notary or witness. But then again, I'm not a lawyer, so... Anyway, Triton gives Ursula the trident, Eric is playing with his dinghy, and Ursula turns into a kaiju. Alright, let me level with you for a minute. This climax is really cool and everything, but I've already been summarizing for what feels like a jillion minutes, and I still have 30 minutes to go. So I'm going to give you the bare bones summary of this. Ursula gets mad with power, throws Eric into the sea, stirs up a whirlpool, raises a ship from the first act. Eric steers into Ursula and kills her by popping her like a poorly made inflatable prop at Disney on Ice. Which, yes, okay, is a very specific analogy, but that actually happened to me as a kid. I'm not joking. You can ask my grandma. Really. It was hilarious. So, Ursula dies. Triton gets his powers back, realizes that Ariel really does love Eric, and since Eric saved his life, realizes that humans aren't all bad. Triton turns Ariel a human, and there's a great big happily ever after. The end.
I love you, Daddy.
Now we can walk, now we can run, now we can stay all day in the sun. Just you and me, and I can be.
Okay, that took way longer than I thought. But hey, it's over, and now we can move on to Phase 4. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the most basic comparisons between the book and the movie, and then work my way up to the more complex. Sound good? Flinton! You won't get an answer! Stop asking questions! Alright, so the most basic comparison is this. One's a fairy tale, and one's a movie. I should actually cut this out. This is pretty insulting. Okay, so one of the most basic comparisons between them is that each version has characters that the other doesn't. Most notably, in the fairy tale there's the Little Mermaid's grandmother, the one who informs the Little Mermaid about humans, the surface world, and how to get an immortal soul. In the film, she's nowhere to be seen, and many of her duties are picked up by Triton, who, in the fairy tale, didn't have much of a role at all. Meanwhile, the film just has way more characters that weren't in the fairy tale at all. There's Flounder, and Sebastian, and Scuttle, and Flotsam, and Jetsam, and Grimsby, and Chef, and even one extra sister. These are all acceptable additions, except you, Alana! You add nothing! Why are you even— These are all acceptable additions because it adds personality to the film and helps it feel more fleshed out. If we were watching a movie with only 5 speaking roles, or 4.5 speaking roles, the scene would feel really empty. And speaking of which, let's look at those main characters a little deeper. Starting with King Triton. So like I said before, in the fairy tale, he's barely present. Almost all his importance as a character was given over to his mother for a reason that I'll explain a little bit later. But in the movie, he's pretty well defined. We can tell early on that he cares deeply about his daughters and wants to protect them.
You could have been seen by one of those barbarians, by one of those humans.
Daddy, they're not barbarians.
They're dangerous.
And we also learn why he's so prejudiced against humans.
You don't even know him.
Know him? I don't have to know him. They're all the same. Spineless, savage, harpooning fish eaters.
And yeah, he's rolling his eyes and is being overprotective, but he's a single dad with 6 teenage daughters. And can you really blame him when one of them says something like this?
I'm 16 years old. I'm not a child.
Don't you take that tone of voice with me, young lady.
Well,
yeah, he's harsh and strict and overreacts a little. Okay, a lot. But you can tell he's doing the best he can and wants to do things right. Look at how he talks to Sebastian afterwards and questions how he handled that discussion.
Do you think I was too hard on her?
Definitely not.
And at the end of the movie, he even gets his own character arc resolved and sees that his prejudice was wrong and he should trust his daughter.
She really does love him, doesn't she, Sebastian?
Triton is the most relatable character in the whole movie. What more, he's given even more character depth in the original draft of the opening.
A fine strong wind and a following sea. King Triton must be in a friendly type mood.
King Triton?
White ruler of the Mer people, lad. Thought every good sailor knew all about him.
I'll sing you a song of the king of the sea, and it's hey to the starboard heave-ho. The ruler of all of the oceans is he, in mysterious fathoms below.
Yeah, this is a really cool feature. I don't know why they didn't keep it in the 30th anniversary Blu-ray. I mean, they just cut it out entirely. I mean, I still have the 25th anniversary, but come on, man. Do you expect me to buy a new version every 5 years? Because I will. I will. Anyway, The same early draft also gives away something else, something unexpected.
There's a whole world of mer people under the sea.
King Triton's their ruler.
He's got 7 fair daughters.
And a witch of a sister named Ursula.
Oh my God!
Ursula?
Evil and ugly and hungry for power, King Triton, he banished her off into exile, and there she lives now, just biding her time.
So yeah, let's talk about Ursula, arguably the biggest character change between the fairy tale and the film. Like I mentioned before, the sea witch in the fairy tale is just a businesswoman. She doesn't seek out the Little Mermaid. She doesn't have a vendetta against the king. She's actually more of a plot device than a real character. She exists to get the mermaid from the sea to the land. But in the film, she's a villain through and through. Bad to the bone. I mean, except for the octopus part, because they have bones. But anyway, Ursula is driven by revenge, by power lust and greed. She uses Ariel for her own gain and sabotages her when she's about to succeed. And then even later, she becomes a princess from the fairy tale and twists it further, making Eric fall in love with her. Not even just through beauty and the stolen voice, but also hypnosis. I mean, that's overkill. In the fairy tale, the witch doesn't care at all what happens to the Little Mermaid. When the mermaid sisters come to her to give the Little Mermaid a way out, the sea witch helps them. She takes their hair as payment, but that also further proves her indifference to their suffering and sees it as yet another business opportunity. In the film, though, she betrays Ariel, seduces Eric, and then throws him aside like that girl who promised you that you were the only one for her, and she carved your initials into her homeroom desk, but then left you as soon as she saw that Ben got a BMW for his birthday. You promised we'd be together forever, Amanda! Moving on to Eric now. Eric's an important character not just for the story or adaptation, but for Disney. Up until him, all the princes we had were creepy, boring, or starts out well but flubs the landing. Eric has charisma, he treats people well, and he has a third likable trait, all a far cry from the fairy tale prince who is pompous and dumb as a rock and treats the Little Mermaid like a possession. Eric views Ariel as a friend and naturally develops feelings for her. Over 3 whole days, in fact. That's like 3 times more time used to get to know her than any of the other princes have ever bothered. He's a strong first step towards Disney writing likable male love interests. And hey, he never tries to mansplain, so yeah, there's that. And this is a more personal note, but isn't it refreshing how he can just say what he feels and doesn't have to hide or be shy about his emotions? As a man, I can really appreciate this. I'm so tired of Disney princes just acting uninterested or having to hide how they feel. Looking at you, Aladdin, and Beast, and Guy from Mulan, whose name I can never remember. And now, lastly but most importantly, let's look at Ariel, the Little Mermaid. Now, for the titular character, the protagonist, the face of the story, she has to be done well. In both the fairy tale and the film, the Little Mermaid is a curious, passionate, wistful teenager, one who seeks greener pastures. I guess literally. A young, hopeless romantic, caring but slightly irrational, strong-willed but weak-hearted. She's absolutely flawed but in a sympathetic way, one that accurately reflects many teenagers. And that's why I'm so very hesitant to say this, but Ariel is a truly awful protagonist. Baby, wait! Okay, let me try to justify this. Ariel is a spectacular failure of a protagonist. There are basic rules in writing on how to create an engaging protagonist. Ariel follows practically none of them. Let's break it down. First off, the conflict of the movie is pretty clear to understand. Ariel is a mermaid in love with a human, but she can never be with a human unless she becomes a human herself, and doing so requires sacrifice. Simple. Now, as a protagonist, she is responsible for the conflict, which is actually a good thing, because it means that she is the main force that drives the plot, right? Wrong. Ariel is the most passive character in the entire film. She causes things to happen, sure, like treasure hunting, upsetting her dad, collecting gadgets and gizmos aplenty. But when it comes to plot-specific advancements,
zip.
Ursula is the one who seeks her out. Ursula is the one that turns her human. Ursula is the one that convinces her to turn human. Ursula's motivations supersede that of the protagonist, which is fine. Many stories are antagonist-driven, but the thing is, the very basic conflict isn't. So at the very least, Ariel should be the one to solve the problem, right? After Ursula uses her, she should be the one to stop her and right the wrongs, right? Wrong! Again! Triton is the one who confronts Ursula. Triton is the one who escalates the plot by giving over his powers. Ariel just watches. So Ursula succeeds in gaining ultimate power. Surely now it's Ariel who puts a stop to her, right? It's the dark night of the soul. It's darkest before the dawn. Rock bottom. This is a point where the protagonist is given no choice but to take matters in their own hands and fix what they started. No, after Ursula eats her Wheaties, it's Eric, yes, Eric, did I stutter, who ends her. All while Ariel sits and watches. Ariel does nothing the entire climax. And throughout all the rest of the story, she's passive. In fact, she doesn't even have a character arc. The plot of any story must have a reason. That reason, more often than not, is to show an example of growth in the protagonist. One that we, as the audience, identify with. Because we see so much of us in them. This is called a character arc. So, what growth does Ariel, the Little Mermaid herself, the titular character, learn from this journey? What has she learned from this conflict she has created? What has she learned about herself or the world from overcoming this trial? How does she change as a person? She doesn't. At the beginning of the film, she wants to be a human and fall in love, but she isn't responsible for that actually happening, and so she learns nothing from it. She wants something, does nothing, and gets everything. Happily ever after, Ursula's defeated by her new husband, a husband who, by the way, has a character arc where he learned to stop pining for someone who may or may not exist and appreciate someone who is here and cares for you.
Eric, if I may say, far better than any dream girl is one of flesh and blood. One warm and caring and right before your eyes.
What are you doing? Grim, I lost her once. I'm not gonna lose her again.
I mean, Triton has a character arc too. He learns not to be so judgmental and allow his daughter room to grow and be happy.
She really does love him, doesn't she, Sebastian?
Then I guess there's just one problem left.
And what's that, Your Majesty?
How much I'm going to miss her.
But Ariel doesn't. She does not learn, she does not grow. She gets what she wants, but she doesn't earn it. She is, quite possibly, the worst protagonist I have ever seen. But I still love you! Okay, I know I have some explaining to do. Ariel's a terrible protagonist. I'm pretty sure I made that clear. But she's not a bad character. I mean, she's well-rounded and likable. She's kind to her friends, she's adventurous and passionate, she's rebellious and honest, and she's fun. Yeah, she has flaws, but a good character needs flaws. And the flaws she has are relatable. She's a heart-struck teenager in love for the first time. Who hasn't been? She's impulsive, makes huge decisions without thinking things through. But I mean, we all do that at times. That's why it's so frustrating that she doesn't learn anything when she has these flaws that get her into trouble. We like this character. We can identify with her, flaws and all. We don't just want her to succeed, we want her to earn it. We want her to overcome her flaws and improve into a better human being. because it gives us hope that we can do the same. Okay, but in all seriousness, I adore Ariel. I mean, look. I even have a little shrine to her. She's just so cute. I mean, look at this stuff. Isn't it neat? Wouldn't you think my collection's I love Ariel, and I love this movie, and I love this fairy tale. And that brings us to the last thing we need to talk about. The most important element of making an adaptation. The theme, the moral, the lesson, the reason the story is even being told at all. Every story has this. Not just fairy tales or kid stories, but every story has a reason, a philosophy behind it that makes it interesting, why it should be told. So, what is the theme, the moral, or the message of The Little Mermaid? Well, one of the more common interpretations of the moral of The Little Mermaid is this. I'm a girl, but I'm in love with a man who isn't in love with me, so in order to get him to love me, I should change. Now I understand how one could get that interpretation, but I disagree with that being the intended moral. Firstly, because the fairy tale shows that by changing you actually don't get what you want. The movie does a bit, but that's not what I believe Hans Christian Andersen intended when he wrote the fairy tale. Personally, I see The Little Mermaid as an allegory for becoming an adult. I mean, it's literally about a little girl turning into a woman. And look, there are clear parallels here. The sea could be viewed as a metaphor for childhood and the human world being adulthood. A young girl being tempted into wanting to be a woman to be with a man? You better believe that was topical in the 19th century. In fact, the loss of a voice could even be a commentary on how women were expected to be seen and not heard. And to keep going with this, the stabbing abdominal pains and bleeding after being turned into a woman could even be a metaphor for period pains, again showing the transition into being an adult. And while Little Mermaid didn't get what she wanted in the fairy tale, she also can't go back to being a child. The movie has a happy ending, but it still can be viewed as an example of becoming a woman. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but no matter what, you can never go back to being an innocent kid. Now, I mentioned the grandmother a little bit ago and how she had a different role in the fairy tale then that the king couldn't fill. Well, back then, women raised girls and men raised boys to fit their respective roles. It would only make sense for the grandmother to raise a girl into a woman, because the dad didn't really know how to raise a girl that way. This is why the king is so absent in the book, but so present in the movie, because single dads raising daughters are everywhere in modern times. This theme of femininity and transitioning to adulthood is also present in the Sea Witch. Heck, she could even be a personified figure of puberty, of Mother Nature, the force that turns girls into women with period pains, monthly bleeding, and new adult troubles, even if they aren't ready for it. And that leads back into why I can forgive Ariel for being a bad protagonist. The moral and overall theme of growing up is unavoidable. Even if you are inactive, sometimes life just pushes you into being an adult. The film's story grasped the moral of the fairy tale, but it just didn't manage to incorporate it into their protagonist. So, yeah. Even though the Disney film kind of fumbled the handling of the protagonist, and went about telling the moral in a more lighthearted way, the Disney film does still display the same themes and tell the same story and message that Hans Christian Andersen intended. And to address the elephant in the room, yes, I am a self-identified man, and I know that this is a very female-heavy story with a very female-centric moral that I've been analyzing and interpreting and frankly mansplaining. But this is my interpretation and my analysis. It's my opinion. I don't expect you to just absorb it and claim it as your own. I hope that this can get you to think and create your own analysis, your own interpretation of this beloved cartoon and this fantastically classic fairy tale. That's what I can hope for. Because, I mean, I just sat here and just explained my interpretation for like 100 minutes. And now that I have, I think it's time to wrap things up. So, in short, The Little Mermaid's a good fairy tale and a good movie. It has fun characters, a good moral, a terrible protagonist that's still somehow likable, and neither the fairy tale nor the movie get enough credit as they deserve. At least, in my opinion. And now I'm betting you're all asking the question, or hoping I'll answer the question, what's better, the book or the movie? And it's not really fair to compare them. The fairy tale is only like 20 pages. Like, it's not a long read. And the movie has like musical numbers and animation and pretty colors. They're both great. They're both great. See the movie if you haven't seen the movie. Read the fairy tale if you haven't read the fairy tale. I mean, I love them both. I'm not going to recommend one over the other. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't talk about them for a billion minutes unless I thought they were really good or really bad. And they're really good. I know I meant that as a compliment, but you know what, screw it. I've been here for an hour or 9, so I'm done. I'm done. Done. Hey everyone, Mr. Flitton here. I'm just sitting here in my second Little Mermaid shirt. I have many, don't ask how many. I'm almost done editing the video, as you can see right here. And I'm just doing a little end slate thing. Really, mainly to thank you for sitting through this. When I started out, I didn't intend for this video to be this long. I thought it would be like half an hour tops. But then I reread the fairy tale and I rewatched the movie for the jillionth time. And when I wrote the script, it was like 42 pages. So I'm like, okay, this is probably going to be closer to maybe like 45 minutes. That wasn't true either. As you can tell, it's about an hour long. And you just sat through all of it if you're watching this. So thank you. Really, thank you. I've wanted to do this YouTube thing for a while just because I'm very passionate about writing and art and all things pop culture, really. My original plan was to do 2 uploads every month. And then I started doing this and I realized that wasn't possible, so I said, okay, we'll do 1 upload every month. That's also not possible. I meant for this to be finished in November, and I just missed the deadline. I don't know, I mean, it's all on me. This channel is called Mr. Flitton because I do everything. I do all the reading, I do all the watching, I do all the writing, the proofreading, the filming. While I'm filming, it's just me. I'm manning the camera and the microphone and checking the audio inputs and doing the lighting. And then I do all the editing myself. It's entirely me. It's all me. And it's been a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. But I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to not really stress myself to make these videos as frequently as I intended at first, because, you know, I also have a full-time job, and I guess I'm getting off point. What I just want to say is thank you so much for watching this. I hope you stick with the channel, because I'm going to keep making more videos, and they probably won't all be as long, although some might be longer, but they're all going to get better. Like, for one, I'm going to fix my microphone so it's not so awful sounding, and it's just, I got nowhere to go but up. So thank you so much, and hope you stick with me.
You don't even know him.
Know him? I don't have to know him. They're all the same. Spineless, savage, harpooning fish eaters, incapable of any feeling.
Daddy, I love him!